Sometimes the loudest statement isn't a headline, a tweet, or a press conference. It's silence. And right now, Caitlin Clark's silence is echoing louder than anything the WNBA could possibly say. No interviews, no subtle tweets, not even a cryptic emoji post. Nothing. And somehow, that nothing is becoming the most powerful move of her entire career. Because while the league's top executives scrambled to patch together a narrative about historic growth and unity, Caitlin hasn't lifted a finger to defend herself, and yet she's winning the public conversation without ever saying a word. It all started with one interview, a seemingly harmless sit-down between NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and NBC News. The kind of polished corporate PR chat we've seen 1,000 times before. You know the setup. Talk about progress, mention inclusion, sprinkle in some buzzwords about expansion, and move on. But this time, something went off script. Somewhere between his usual talking points and the familiar optimism, Adam Silver said the quiet part out loud. He admitted that the WNBA doesn't just have business challenges, it has relationship issues. 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words that cracked open everything the league has spent months trying to hide. The reaction was instant. Players side-eyed the comment, fans flooded timelines, and within hours, Silver's words became the spark for one of the most uncomfortable conversations the WNBA had ever faced. Because everyone knew exactly who he was talking about, even if he didn't say her name. When the commissioner of basketball's biggest league admits that the sister league is struggling from the inside out, that's not just transparency, that's a confession. And for a sport still fighting for credibility, it was a disaster that no amount of PR spin could clean up. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. While executives scrambled, statements were drafted, and reporters dissected every sentence of Silver's interview, Caitlin Clark, the player at the center of it all, did nothing. No response, no denial, no attempt to set the record straight. She simply stayed quiet. And somehow, that silence spoke louder than any statement ever could. Because by not engaging, she turned the entire situation upside down. Every time she didn't respond, people talked more. Every time she ignored a headline, another one appeared. Her silence became the story. It's rare to see an athlete hold this kind of leverage without even trying. Most players react instantly when controversy hits. They post Notes app statements, go live on Instagram, or call out reporters. But Caitlin? She understood something the league didn't. When you're the one holding the spotlight, you don't have to chase attention. Attention comes to you. And right now, every camera, every quote, every narrative surrounding the WNBA is orbiting around one question. What will Caitlin Clark say? The genius of it all is that she doesn't have to. Behind the scenes, executives are panicking. Silver's comment didn't just create backlash, it exposed something deeper. That the WNBA's recent momentum isn't the result of strategy or leadership. It's the result of a single generational player whose influence extends far beyond the court. And that's the uncomfortable truth the league has been avoiding. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's historic growth narrative collapses. And the longer she stays silent, the clearer that truth becomes. Her silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. It's control. In an era where everyone's talking, Caitlin's refusal to join the noise feels powerful, almost rebellious. While others argue, tweet, and backtrack, she's cashing deals, commanding attention, and letting her actions, or lack thereof, tell the story. Because she knows something most people don't. Silence isn't weakness, it's dominance. And right now, her silence is doing more damage to the league's image than any clapback ever could. But this isn't just a story about one player staying quiet. It's about what that quiet reveals. A league built on shaky foundations. an executive team struggling to keep control, and a commissioner who may have accidentally confirmed that the WNBA's success is being carried on a single set of shoulders. So before we dive into the chaos Adam Silver unleashed with one careless phrase, we have to understand how the power dynamic flipped so fast, and why Caitlin Clark, by saying absolutely nothing, might be playing the smartest game of all. It was supposed to be routine. Another carefully managed media appearance where the NBA commissioner flashes a practice smile, says all the right things, and leaves everyone with a soundbite about progress and momentum. But that's not what happened, because during his NBC interview, Adam Silver said something no one expected, something that instantly sent shockwaves through both leagues. He admitted in plain words that the WNBA doesn't just have financial issues, it has relationship issues. And in that single moment, he confirmed what fans, players, and insiders had been whispering all season long. Something is seriously broken behind the scenes. At first, it almost slipped past unnoticed. The interviewer nodded, Silver kept talking, and for a split second, it sounded like a throwaway comment. But within hours, social media caught it. And once they did, there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. Fans clipped the moment, slowed it down, analyzed every syllable. Relationship issues? What did he mean? Between who? The speculation spread like wildfire. Some thought he was talking about the growing tension between players and leadership. Others believed it was a subtle acknowledgement of the league's dependence on one player, Caitlin Clark. Either way, it was the first time anyone from the NBA had publicly confirmed what so many insiders already knew. The WNBA's biggest problem isn't competition, it's connection.
What made it even worse was how he said it. There was no context, no damage control, no careful pivot, just a straight-up admission that landed like a punch to the gut. The WNBA has relationship issues. In corporate language, that's basically code for chaos, and in the court of public opinion, chaos is blood in the water. Fans went ballistic. Comment sections lit up with people asking the obvious question. If the commissioner himself is acknowledging dysfunction, how bad must things really be? But the people who took it hardest weren't the fans. They were the players. For months, they'd been demanding better treatment, better pay, and better communication. They'd hinted at internal disconnection, but hearing the NBA's top executive confirm it on live TV was like being exposed under a spotlight. Veteran players started side-eyeing management in interviews, team reps subtly called out leadership on social media, and the entire illusion of unity that the WNBA had spent the last year carefully building started to crumble overnight. Silver probably thought he was being transparent, maybe even admirable. After all, admitting a problem can look like honesty. But in this case, honesty came at a cost, because what he really did was strip away the league's safety net. By calling out relationship issues, he unintentionally exposed the league's biggest vulnerability, that the relationships holding it together aren't strong enough to survive without one person keeping the entire structure upright. And here's the twist most people missed. While the headlines focused on Silver calls out relationship problems, the real story was buried in who those issues were with. He didn't name names, but everyone knew exactly where the tension pointed. It wasn't random players, it wasn't the rookies or the bench, it was the one player whose name keeps the league relevant in every conversation, Caitlin Clark. That's what made this moment so explosive. Because when the commissioner of the NBA, a man known for calculated diplomacy, casually admits that the WNBA is struggling to manage internal relationships, he's not just talking about workplace drama. He's acknowledging a power imbalance. He's admitting that one player's influence might be greater than the league's leadership itself. And that's not something you can fix with a press release. After that interview aired, everything changed. The public perception shifted almost instantly. Fans stopped talking about Caitlyn as a rising star and started talking about her as the center of gravity, the person around whom everything else revolves. Silver's comment wasn't just an oops moment, it was an accidental confession that confirmed the league's dependence on her. And now that it was out in the open, there was no way to hide it again. Within 24 hours, threads popped up across Reddit, X, and YouTube dissecting every angle of his quote. Some labeled it a Freudian slip, others called it a moment of truth. But either way, one message came through loud and clear. The commissioner just told the world that the WNBA's foundation is cracked. And while that revelation alone would have been enough to create headlines, the silence that followed made it even louder. Because Caitlyn Clark, the person at the heart of the storm, didn't respond, not once. And that's when the story truly flipped. Silver's 3 words started a fire. Caitlyn's silence turned it into an inferno. Suddenly, every conversation about the WNBA wasn't about the game or the playoffs or the finals. It was about her. Every network, every podcast, every sports outlet was asking the same thing. What does Caitlyn think? What is she planning? And the fact that nobody had an answer made people even more obsessed with finding one. Silver's accidental confession didn't just reveal a leadership crisis. It handed Caitlyn Clark more leverage than any player in league history. By exposing how fragile the league's relationships truly are, he unknowingly elevated her from star athlete to silent kingmaker. And the longer she stayed quiet, the more power she gained. Because now the narrative wasn't just about the WNBA's internal problems, it was about the one person who didn't have to say a word to control the entire conversation. Silence can be dangerous, especially when it comes from someone who's used to making noise. Caitlyn Clark isn't just another player in the WNBA. She's the engine that powers its attention, the name that drives headlines, ratings, and revenue. So when she went quiet in the middle of a media firestorm that could easily have swallowed her whole, it wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. And whether she planned it or not, that silence turned into a masterclass in power. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do in a storm is stand perfectly still and let everyone else reveal who they really are. In the days after Adam Silver's interview, the sports world braced for Caitlyn's response. Every outlet had a draft headline waiting. Reporters camped on her socials. Fans dissected every move. Even the fact that she didn't post became newsworthy. But nothing came. No tweets, no press statement, no reaction. Just pure, intentional quiet. And that quiet hit harder than any fiery clapback ever could. Because in the modern age of instant opinions and viral outrage, doing nothing is almost rebellious. Everyone else was talking, players, executives, analysts, but the one person at the center of it all refused to join the noise. And that's when people started to realize this wasn't passivity, it was power. Caitlyn's silence made everyone else's words feel small. Every quote from a player, every clarification from the league, every corporate press release, they all felt like background noise compared to the weight of what she didn't say. In a world addicted to reaction, she created suspense. She made people wait, and that waiting built pressure, conversation, curiosity, all of it revolving around her. Her silence didn't remove her from the narrative, it became the narrative.
Behind the scenes, though, that quiet was deafening for the WNBA. League insiders reportedly scrambled to predict her next move, terrified of what she might say if she ever did break her silence. That's the kind of power few athletes ever achieve, the ability to shake an entire organization simply by doing nothing. The league's PR team pushed out feel-good stories, highlighting historic viewership and growth milestones, hoping to redirect attention. But the internet wasn't buying it. Every thread, every comment section circled back to one question: why isn't Caitlyn Clark saying anything? And more importantly, what does that silence mean? It meant control. Absolute control. While Adam Silver was walking back his own words and Kathy Engelbert was busy pretending everything was fine, Caitlyn's silence quietly flipped the power dynamic upside down.
She no longer needed the league to validate her. The league needed her to survive. Every day she stayed quiet, the imbalance became more obvious. She didn't have to prove anything, didn't have to explain herself, didn't even have to show up online. Her value was already proven. And now, by saying nothing, she was reminding everyone just how valuable she really was. Think about it. When most public figures go silent during controversy, it's usually because they're hiding. But Caitlyn's silence wasn't defensive, it was dominant. It wasn't the silence of someone afraid to speak, it was the silence of someone who doesn't need to. She had nothing to prove, and that realization made the league's leadership even more anxious. Because when the person driving your entire brand narrative decides she doesn't owe you a response, that's not just unsettling, it's terrifying. The irony is that silence, in this case, spoke louder than any statement could. By not defending herself, she made it clear she didn't feel attacked. By not reacting to Silver's comments, she implied they weren't worth her energy. And by refusing to engage in the public debate about her role in the WNBA's relationship issues, she positioned herself above it all. She let everyone else scramble for relevance while she stayed untouchable. Her silence also exposed something deeper, the imbalance of respect. While the league's leadership seemed desperate to control the optics, Caitlyn showed she didn't need optics. She didn't need interviews or carefully worded apologies to keep her image spotless. The fans were already on her side. Her silence let them fill in the blanks, and in doing so, they painted her as the calm in the chaos, composed, confident, and unbothered. It's the kind of image that can't be manufactured by PR teams. It has to be earned. Meanwhile, every measurable metric in the WNBA told the same story. Ticket sales, viewership, merch revenue, social media engagement all dipped the moment she wasn't playing or speaking. And yet, the league still hesitated to acknowledge her influence outright. That's what made her silence sting even more. It was her way of reminding them, you can't spin the numbers. The proof is already out there. By staying quiet, she let reality do the talking, and it was saying plenty. Fans started calling her silence the move of the year. Analysts described it as the quiet flex. And they were right, because while Adam Silver's words had exposed cracks in the WNBA structure, Caitlyn's silence turned those cracks into canyons. Every time she didn't respond, the league looked more desperate to fill the void she left. And every attempt they made to steer the conversation away from her only made her presence more undeniable. There's an old saying, never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Caitlyn didn't. She let the league talk itself in circles. She let executives contradict themselves, analysts overanalyze, and fans argue among themselves. She didn't need to join the conversation because she already owned it. Her silence wasn't just a lack of noise, it was precision. Every day she said nothing, she gained more leverage, more mystique, and more respect. By the time a week had passed, it was clear. Caitlyn Clark had mastered a weapon few athletes ever learned to use, silence as dominance. The league's executives were in damage control mode, her fellow players were cautiously watching, and fans were treating every move she didn't make like breaking news. That's when everyone realized this wasn't about one quote or one controversy anymore. It was about control, and Caitlyn Clark had all of it. Her silence wasn't a pause, it was a statement, and the longer it lasted, the louder it became. Because silence, when used right, doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you're letting everyone else reveal themselves first. For months, the WNBA has been parading one phrase like a badge of honor: historic growth. Every press release, every interview, every soundbite from the league's front office uses those same two words. But when you actually strip away the PR language and look at the numbers, that historic growth starts to look a lot less like organic progress and a lot more like one player single-handedly carrying an entire league on her shoulders. The WNBA's leadership points to record-breaking viewership during the playoffs, skyrocketing ticket sales, and an explosion of social media engagement. On paper, it all sounds incredible. The problem is, almost every spike aligns perfectly with one thing: Caitlin Clark's rise. When she plays, viewership surges. When she sits, it drops. When she's featured in promotional campaigns, engagement skyrockets. When she's not, it flatlines. The math isn't complicated. The league's success graph literally mirrors her activity.
But here's where it gets even more revealing. The same week Adam Silver gave his now infamous interview about relationship issues, the league released new data claiming finals ratings had doubled compared to the previous year. It sounded like a massive win, until analysts started digging into the fine print. Nielsen, the company that tracks television ratings, quietly changed how it calculates viewership. For the first time, they began including public spaces like bars, airports, and even hotel lobbies. Suddenly, the numbers looked inflated, not because millions of new fans had tuned in, but because TVs and background environments were now being counted as viewers. In other words, the WNBA didn't double its viewership because the audience suddenly exploded. It doubled its counting methods. The illusion was perfect, until fans started noticing that the numbers didn't match the energy. Stadiums weren't filling up the way the headlines suggested. Merch sales were only spiking for one name. And when you traced every new record the league celebrated, one constant appeared every single time: Caitlin Clark. The truth is, the WNBA's growth story isn't about collective progress. It's about one anomaly rewriting what's possible. Caitlin's debut didn't just draw casual viewers, it dragged an entirely new demographic into the sport. Networks that barely mentioned the WNBA before were suddenly fighting for broadcast rights. Her jersey became one of the top-selling items in the league within days. Even opposing teams saw surges in ticket sales whenever her team came to town. She wasn't just growing her brand, she was expanding everyone else's by proximity. And yet, the league's leadership tried to downplay it. They didn't want to admit that their supposed growth depended so heavily on one player. Because once you acknowledge that, you also acknowledge the danger. What happens when that one player decides to step away? What happens when the person responsible for your so-called success realizes she doesn't actually need you to succeed? That's the nightmare scenario that keeps league executives awake at night. And Adam Silver's relationship issues comment made it painfully clear that they know it. It's not the first time a league has been built around a single superstar, but it's rarely been this obvious. Caitlin Clark isn't just a key piece of the puzzle, she is the puzzle. Her impact is measurable in every statistic the league promotes. Average ticket prices nearly doubled when she entered the WNBA. Merchandise sales reached record highs, with her jersey consistently selling out across multiple retailers. Social media mentions of the league increased by over 300% during her first month alone. These aren't random coincidences, they're cause and effect. The WNBA's new audience isn't a movement, it's a magnet, and Caitlin Clark is the one pulling everything toward her. But perhaps the most telling evidence isn't in the numbers themselves, it's in what happens when she's not there. When Caitlin missed games last season due to injury, viewership dipped instantly. Online engagement fell. Ticket resale prices dropped overnight. The buzz surrounding the league faded like a balloon losing air. Fans weren't tuning in for the WNBA as a whole. They were tuning in for her. That's not a sustainable business model. That's dependency disguised as success. It's the kind of uncomfortable truth that no executive wants to admit publicly, which explains why the league's PR team clings so tightly to words like historic growth. It's not a lie, but it's not the whole truth either. Because if you subtract Caitlin Clark from the equation, the numbers don't just shrink, they collapse. And that's what makes Adam Silver's comments so significant. Whether he meant to or not, he confirmed what the data already shows. The WNBA isn't thriving as a unified league. It's surviving off the gravitational pull of one player who has, intentionally or not, become bigger than the system she plays in. Every dollar, every headline, every network deal,
All of it traces back to her orbit. Fans understand this instinctively. They're not dumb. They see through the spin. When the league boasts about record-breaking ratings, they already know those records belong to Caitlin. When executives tweet about increased engagement, they know that engagement started with one name trending every time she steps onto the court. The numbers don't lie. They just reveal what the league refuses to say out loud. And maybe that's what makes her silence even more powerful. Because while the league keeps trying to write its own success story, Caitlin's numbers are quietly writing a very different one. A story where she doesn't just play for the league plays for her. Where she's not just an athlete, but an ecosystem. And where silence, backed by numbers this overwhelming, becomes louder than any speech could ever be. Her silence isn't just emotional now, it's measurable. It's showing up in ratings charts, in merch stats, in TV contracts. It's the proof that she doesn't have to fight for recognition. The data fights for her. And that's the kind of influence that can't be negotiated, spun, or ignored. Because when the numbers start telling the same story as the silence, that's not coincidence, that's confirmation. And the truth those numbers are revealing is this: Caitlin Clark isn't part of the WNBA's success. She is the success. Everything else is just noise, trying to keep up.
Behind closed doors, the tone inside the WNBA's upper offices wasn't optimism, it was panic. The moment Adam Silver's words hit the airwaves, what was supposed to be a polished interview turned into a full-blown crisis. Internally, staff described the mood as damage control mode on steroids. Meetings were called, emails flew, phone calls went unanswered because everyone was already on another one. And through it all, one question hung in the air. How do we fix this before Caitlin Clark decides to respond? According to multiple reports, that's when Adam Silver himself stepped in. Publicly, he went quiet, but privately, he was working overtime. Insiders claim that within 48 hours of the interview airing, Silver began reaching out through intermediaries, not just to smooth things over with WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, but to re-establish some kind of connection with Caitlin's camp. The fear wasn't that she would lash out. The fear was that she wouldn't, that her silence would linger long enough to make the league's leadership look irrelevant. Because when your most valuable player doesn't even acknowledge your existence, that's not indifference, that's dominance. Whispers started spreading through sports media circles. Silver was personally invested in keeping Caitlin close, not because of loyalty or politics, but because he understood the math. He knew the numbers, the ticket spikes, the viewership swings, the endorsement valuations, all orbit around one name. And if that name ever decided to detach itself from the WNBA brand, the illusion of historic growth would shatter overnight. You don't need an economist to tell you what happens when a business builds its future on one person's shadow. It's not stability, it's a ticking clock. That's why, according to sources close to the league, Silver began quietly offering Caitlin something that's almost unheard of for an active player: influence. Not just money, not just marketing deals, but actual say, input on promotional strategies, player relations, even ideas about future media direction. It wasn't an official position, of course. It was more subtle than that. A phone call here, a meeting invitation there, a promise that her perspective matters. In the world of professional sports, those aren't just gestures, they're lifelines. But the irony is that Caitlin never asked for any of it. She didn't campaign for more power. She didn't demand a seat at the table. Her silence gave her leverage that money couldn't buy. And that's what terrified the league the most. Because power earned through silence can't be negotiated. It can't be controlled. Every time Silver tried to repair the relationship with another PR quote about supporting women's basketball, it only reminded fans how dependent the league had become on one person's presence. And the more they tried to fix the optics, the worse it looked. Meanwhile, the cracks inside the organization started to show. Players who'd been loyal to the league for years began speaking up, not against Caitlin, but against leadership.
Nneka Ogwumike openly questioned the communication gap between players and executives. Sophie Cunningham hinted at a possible lockout if things didn't change. And then came Candace Parker's quiet bombshell, the revelation that Adam Silver texted her more than her own commissioner did. That one line, dropped casually on her podcast, sent shockwaves through the entire sports world. How could the NBA's top executive have a better relationship with WNBA players than the commissioner of their own league? Inside league offices, that revelation wasn't just embarrassing, it was catastrophic, because it exposed exactly what Silver had been trying to hide since his NBC interview. The WNBA's relationship issues weren't just about business strategy or media deals, they were personal. Deep, systemic, emotional disconnect between players and leadership that no PR statement could patch over. And now, thanks to a single careless phrase and Caitlin Clark's calculated silence, all of it was out in the open. Every day that Caitlin stayed quiet, the pressure built. Executives whispered about how to get her back on board, as if she'd ever left. Sponsors began reaching out directly to her management team, bypassing the league entirely. And while the WNBA tried to keep up appearances, posting upbeat graphics, highlighting community partnerships, everyone could see what was really happening. The power dynamic had completely shifted. Caitlin Clark wasn't just the face of the league anymore, she was its backbone. And when your backbone starts moving independently, the whole body starts to shake. It got to the point where even Silver himself, the man who accidentally started the fire, was reportedly reaching out personally through trusted channels to keep communication open. Some insiders claimed he even suggested new collaborative ideas between the NBA and WNBA, anything that might give the appearance of unity. But unity built on panic doesn't last. It's like putting a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling wall. The cracks are still there, waiting for the next tremor. And here's the part that really tells you everything you need to know. While all this chaos unfolded, Caitlin never broke character. She didn't comment, didn't react, didn't even drop a vague "trust the process" quote. Instead, she focused on her off-season work, reportedly securing new sponsorship deals, signing speaking contracts worth 6 figures per event, and expanding her brand far beyond basketball. Every move she made outside the court sent a quiet reminder she doesn't need the WNBA to stay relevant, but the WNBA desperately needs her.
That's the part that must keep Adam Silver up at night. Because in trying to manage a PR storm, he accidentally revealed the league's biggest secret, that its survival depends on someone who doesn't need saving. And now, no amount of damage control can change that reality. You can write all the press statements you want. You can post all the glossy highlight reels in the world. But when the person who defines your success isn't even speaking your language anymore, you're not running a league. You're running on borrowed time. Adam Silver's panic wasn't about one bad interview. It was about what that interview exposed. A truth that numbers, fans, and even silence could no longer hide. The WNBA isn't standing on the shoulders of its leadership, it's standing on one player, and she's starting to realize just how tall she really is. For years, the WNBA has preached one message louder than anything else: unity. Together we rise, one league, one vision. It's been the cornerstone of their public image, the idea that while the NBA is a business, the WNBA is a sisterhood. But lately, that image has started to splinter. Beneath the hashtags and press releases, players have begun speaking out, not against each other, but against the people running their league. And the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a temporary rift, it's a full-blown identity crisis. The moment Adam Silver uttered those 3 words, relationship issues, he didn't just embarrass leadership, he gave permission for everyone else to finally say what they've been holding back. Within days, players who had once defended the league's direction began to break their silence. Nneka Ogwumike, one of the most respected veterans and former players' union president, openly criticized the disconnect between the league office and its athletes. On live television, she questioned how leadership could preach growth while ignoring the fundamental problems players have been pointing out for years: pay disparities, travel issues, inconsistent communication, and tone-deaf marketing decisions. Her comments weren't isolated. Sophie Cunningham hinted that players were considering a lockout if things didn't change. That wasn't bluster, that was a warning. A quiet, simmering threat that spoke to just how deep the frustration ran. The kind of threat you only make when you feel unheard. And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get more uncomfortable, Candace Parker dropped a truth bomb that exposed the heart of the dysfunction. On her podcast, she casually revealed that Adam Silver, the commissioner of an entirely different league, texts her more often than her own commissioner does. That one line hit harder than a headline ever could, because it wasn't just shade, it was evidence. It showed that the supposed relationship issues weren't abstract management challenges. They were personal, real, and emotional. Players didn't feel disconnected from the league, they felt abandoned by it. And when Parker said that, she didn't just speak for herself. She spoke for an entire generation of players who spent years being told to trust the process while watching the system fail them over and over again. Even Sabrina Ionescu, one of the league's brightest young stars, admitted she has a better relationship with Silver than with Kathy Engelbert. And that's when the illusion shattered completely. Because if your top players, the faces of your brand, feel more seen by a commissioner who doesn't even run your league, that's not progress, that's collapse. It proved what fans had suspected all along. The WNBA doesn't have a marketing problem or a financial problem, it has a leadership problem. Behind the scenes, things reportedly got tense. Some players began privately voicing frustration over the favoritism shown toward Caitlin Clark, not out of jealousy, but out of exhaustion. They saw the league bending over backwards to protect and promote her while ignoring long-standing issues that affect everyone else. Charter flights, compensation, healthcare, topics that have lingered for years suddenly seemed irrelevant compared to the obsession with leveraging Caitlin's popularity. And while Caitlin herself stayed silent and professional, her silence unintentionally magnified that divide. It wasn't her fault. She didn't create the system, but her success exposed it. Every headline that celebrated her record-breaking ratings reminded the veterans that they'd been carrying this league for years without the same support. Every sponsorship deal she landed made them wonder why the infrastructure for women's basketball only seemed to work when one name was attached to it. And that resentment wasn't about Caitlin personally. It was about the leadership that had turned one player's greatness into everyone else's burden. The league tried to paint over the tension with positivity. Press releases about teamwork and inclusivity flooded social media. Executives tweeted smiling photos with captions like, "The future is bright." But fans saw right through it. They could feel the unease. The interviews sounded rehearsed. The body language during team events looked stiff. What was once a united front now looked like a staged performance, and everyone could tell who the real stars were and who was just filling the frame. And yet, through all of it, Caitlin's silence continued to hang over everything like a fog. She didn't need to pick a side because both sides were already orbiting around her. The veterans respected her talent but resented the circumstances. The executives praised her impact but feared her influence. And somewhere in the middle sat a fan base that had finally woken up to how fragile the league's internal structure really was. This wasn't just about one interview or one controversy. It was about a system that had stretched itself thin, trying to balance progress with politics, growth with ego, and visibility with control. Adam Silver's comment didn't create the cracks, it just made them impossible to ignore. The WNBA's leadership wanted to project strength, but instead, they revealed fragility. A league that prided itself on togetherness now looked more divided than ever.
The most tragic part, these cracks aren't just internal, they're visible to the public. Fans have started taking sides, some defending Caitlin's rising influence, others defending the veterans who paved the way. It's turned the community inward, pitting people who should be allies against each other. And once that kind of division starts, it's almost impossible to reverse. The silence that once felt empowering now felt haunting, because while Caitlin's quiet composure made her untouchable, it also highlighted how much chaos surrounded her. The league's power structure is wobbling, the players are restless, and the commissioner's words have left a scar that no apology can erase. What began as a relationship issue has evolved into a credibility crisis, one that can't be fixed with branding or buzzwords. The cracks are too deep, too public, and too human. And every day the leadership refuses to acknowledge them, those cracks widen. This isn't just a storm anymore. It's a slow collapse, one that everyone inside the WNBA can feel coming, but no one seems brave enough to stop. Because at this point, it's not about basketball, it's about trust, and that's something no amount of historic growth can buy back once it's gone. Silence is often misunderstood. People assume it means uncertainty, that someone's holding their tongue because they don't know what to say. But in rare cases, silence means something entirely different. It means control. It means power. And in Caitlin Clark's case, it means she understands exactly how much weight her words carry, so she's choosing to let everyone else talk themselves into corners while she stays untouchable. What makes her silence so devastating isn't just that it's rare, it's that it's intentional. Every public figure eventually cracks under pressure. They issue statements, they post clarifications, they take sides. But Caitlin hasn't, and that restraint has become her most powerful statement yet. Because while executives scramble, fans argue, and analysts speculate, she's quietly teaching a masterclass in how to win without ever stepping into the arena of chaos. Every day she doesn't respond, the narrative evolves, and it always evolves in her favor. When the league says nothing, it looks defensive. When players complain, it looks divided. But when Caitlin stays quiet, it looks deliberate, poised, measured, strategic. It's the kind of composure that only comes from someone who knows she's already won the conversation before it even starts. And the more time passes, the clearer it becomes. Caitlin's silence isn't a pause, it's a position. It's her saying, without ever speaking, you can argue about me, you can speculate about me, but you can't control me. That's not defiance, that's self-awareness. In a league trying so hard to control its own narrative, she's taken that control simply by refusing to participate in their version of the story. Look at what her silence has accomplished. It's forced the media to keep her name alive even when she says nothing. It's made the WNBA's leadership acknowledge their dependence without her lifting a finger. It's drawn out the players' frustrations, the fans' loyalty, and the executives' anxieties, all without a single quote. That's not luck, that's psychological gravity. She doesn't chase relevance, relevance chases her. Meanwhile, she's doing what the league can't, growing her empire without controversy. Speaking engagements, endorsement deals, brand partnerships that transcend sports. She's building a media presence so strong that she doesn't need the WNBA to amplify her. If anything, the WNBA needs her to stay relevant. Every new contract she signs, every event she headlines, every story written about her silence only makes that truth louder. And that's what makes Adam Silver's original comment so haunting. When he said the league had relationship issues, he wasn't wrong, he just didn't realize how right he was. Because now, the WNBA's biggest relationship problem isn't between its players and its commissioner. It's between the league and the one player who's outgrown it. Caitlin Clark doesn't need to fight for visibility anymore. The league's spotlight is permanently tethered to her name. Think about that for a second. The WNBA has spent years begging for mainstream coverage, and now it has it. But the coverage doesn't belong to the league. It belongs to the one person driving it. The cameras aren't watching because of slogans or campaigns, they're watching because of her. That's not the kind of power you can buy. That's the kind of power you earn. And Caitlin has earned it without demanding it, without forcing it, and without ever needing to explain herself. Her silence, in that sense, has become symbolic. It's no longer just about avoiding drama, it's about representing a different kind of leadership, one rooted in discipline, awareness, and self-worth.
While the league's executives cling to titles and talking points, Caitlyn's proving that true authority doesn't come from speaking the loudest. It comes from knowing you don't have to. And that's why her silence resonates far beyond basketball. It's a reflection of something bigger, a generational shift in how athletes handle power. Old school players fought for attention. Modern stars understand that attention comes to those who don't beg for it. Caitlyn's not out here chasing the spotlight. She's shaping it. Every brand, every media outlet, every network now has to move around her silence. They can't ignore it, can't out-talk it, can't outspin it. It's too big, too magnetic, too real. The WNBA wanted a face for its future. They got one. But what they didn't expect was for that face to realize how powerful it truly is. Caitlin Clark has become both the league's greatest asset and its biggest vulnerability. She's the reason for its rise, but also the mirror reflecting its flaws. And her silence forces everyone, from the front office to the fans, to confront a question they've been avoiding. What happens when the person holding your league together stops needing your league altogether? That's the bigger picture. This isn't just about controversy or contracts or ratings. It's about a quiet revolution, one where a player's restraint exposes an entire system's instability. Caitlyn's silence isn't empty, it's strategic. It's a mirror held up to an organization that can't seem to stop talking long enough to listen. The WNBA's leadership has spent months trying to control a narrative that's already out of their hands. But every time they speak, they only remind the world how much quieter and more powerful she's become. Caitlin Clark's silence isn't a pause between sentences, it's punctuation, the kind that ends a chapter. Because in the end, silence isn't weakness. It's proof that sometimes the most commanding voice doesn't have to speak at all.